Welcome to BookPods. Today we are opening up a book that really shook things up in how we think about being smart. Howard Gardner's 1983 classic, Frames of Mind, The Theory of Multiple Intelligences.
Yeah, it's a foundational text, absolutely, because it challenges the whole idea of who gets to define intelligence. Our goal today is basically to explore why Gardner felt we needed to talk about intelligence as plural, why he wanted to move past this notion that, one single IQ score sums up everything a person can do.
Okay, let's jump right in there. Because before this, particularly back in the 70s, the thinking was pretty rigid, wasn't it?
Oh, definitely. Intelligence was seen as fixed, something you were born with, inherited, and yeah, measurable by one number. That score supposedly told you your potential.
Gardner just fundamentally disagreed with that. He saw it as, well, culturally skewed.
Exactly. His main critique was pretty sharp. IQ tests. They only really measure a couple of specific things, mostly logical thinking and some verbal skills. He argued, look, maybe that test predicts success in a very particular kind of Western school, the non-religious, non-rote memory type, but it's a terrible predictor for success out in the real world for entrepreneurs or political leaders or even great salespeople.
And this wasn't just a hunch, right? He had actual evidence from his research that pointed him towards this whole multiple intelligences idea.
Absolutely. The evidence came from a couple of key places. First, he worked with patients who had suffered brain damage, strokes, trauma, that kind of thing. And he noticed something really interesting. Depending on where the brain was damaged, a specific ability would be lost, but others would often remain totally intact.
Wait, so you mean like someone could lose the ability to speak in complex sentences, but they could still play the piano perfectly?
Or sculpt. Precisely. That dissociation, losing language but keeping musical ability, for instance, strongly suggested these abilities weren't just, different flavors of one single cognitive power. They seemed to operate independently, likely in different brain areas.
That's pretty powerful physical evidence. And then the second group, talented kids. I guess he saw similar patterns there.
He did. He observed children who were just brilliant musicians, maybe incredible artists, but really struggled with math. Or the opposite, kids who aced science and logic but found analyzing poetry or even, say, physical coordination really difficult. It just reinforced this idea that competence in one area didn't mean competence everywhere.
It leads straight to that great analogy you mentioned earlier, the fish in the tree.
Ah,
Judging everyone by an IQ score is like judging a fish by how well it climbs a tree.
yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. We all have different strengths, different weaknesses. The old system just measured tree climbing.
And that's the unfairness he really wanted to address.
Okay, so if the IQ test is flawed, how did Gardner decide what actually counts as a distinct intelligence? What were his ground rules for defining these different frames of mind?
He was quite systematic about it, almost like creating a biological classification. There were several key criteria. Crucially, like we just discussed, potential for isolation by brain damage was a big one. If you could lose that specific skill while others remained, that was a strong indicator. And importantly, the ability had to be useful. It had to have the potential to solve real problems or help acquire new knowledge within a particular culture.
So it had to be functional, practical in some sense,
Mm-hmm.
not just a neat trick. Now, the original book listed 7 intelligences, but the theory is expanded. Right now, we usually talk about 9.
That's right. It evolved a bit.
Let's just quickly list them out so we know what we're dealing with. There's naturalist, musical, logical, mathematical, existential. What else?
Interpersonal, bodily kinesthetic, linguistic verbal, intrapersonal, and visual spatial.
Got it. That's quite a range of human capabilities. So let's maybe dive into these 9, starting with the 2 that schools traditionally value most, the big ones for academics.
Sounds good. Let's start with linguistic verbal intelligence. This is basically mastery over language written, spoken, understanding grammar, having a rich vocabulary. Think poets, novelists, journalists. That anecdote about the poet Robert Graves agonizing over the single word call just to get the right subtle sound, that's peak linguistic intelligence in action.
And neurologically, this ties into specific brain areas.
Yeah, it's strongly associated with the left hemisphere, particularly Broca's area, which is vital for producing speech and handling grammar.
Okay. And the second one in this conventional pair is logical mathematical intelligence, the one IQ tests love.
Exactly. This is all about abstract thinking, reasoning, working with numbers, solving complex problems, forming and testing hypotheses. Think of mathematicians, scientists like Einstein or someone like Katherine Johnson at NASA, capable of following these incredibly long, complex chains of reasoning.
All right, now let's move to maybe less tested, but equally important areas, the personal intelligences. You said these are closely linked.
Very much so. And they're crucial for navigating life outside the classroom, yet often ignored by traditional tests. First, you have interpersonal intelligence. This is about understanding other people, being able to read subtle cues, grasp their motivations, sense their moods, interact effectively.
So this is the skill of a great therapist, a really effective salesperson, or maybe a politician who can connect with people, like Gandhi was mentioned.
Precisely. People high in this intelligence can navigate social situations almost effortlessly. They just get people.
And the flip side of that coin is intrapersonal intelligence, tuning into oneself.
Exactly. This is about self-awareness, understanding your own emotions, your thoughts, your strengths, your weaknesses, and using that deep understanding to guide your own actions and decisions.
So maybe introspective writers like Proust or spiritual teachers, people who spend a lot of time looking inward.
Right. Practices like journaling or meditation are often ways people cultivate this intelligence. It's about knowing yourself deeply.
And you mentioned a fascinating neurobiological connection here.
Yes, this really supports the theory. Both interpersonal and intrapersonal smarts seem to draw heavily on the same brain region, the frontal lobes. The frontal lobes handle high-level thinking, planning, and they integrate information from our senses and our emotional centers, the limbic system, to form a complete picture. Whether that picture is of yourself or someone else, the core machinery seems similar.
That is fascinating. Okay, let's shift gears to the more physical side of things. Sensory and physical intelligences, starting with bodily kinesthetic.
Right. This is about physical coordination, dexterity, using your whole body or parts of your body, like your hands, to solve problems or create things. It involves something called proprioception, that innate sense of where your body parts are without having to look. Think of athletes like Michael Jordan making those incredible midair moves, or a surgeon's precise hand movements, or even a skilled craftsperson shaping materials.
So it's intelligence expressed through movement and physical skill. What about musical intelligence?
This is about sensitivity to sound patterns, pitch, rhythm, timbre, tone.
And it's definitely distinct from language, right? Even though both involve hearing.
Absolutely. That Diana Deutsch study is a great example. People listened to tones, then heard either words or other tones, then had to recall the original tones. Hearing words in between didn't mess up their memory for the tones much, but hearing other tones did interfere. It shows the brain processes musical pitch differently from language sounds. It's its own system.
Makes sense. Okay, rounding out this group, visual spatial intelligence, seeing the world in your mind's eye.
Pretty much. It's the ability to perceive the visual world accurately, but also to perform transformations on those perceptions in your mind, like mentally rotating an object or imagining how a flat piece of paper would look when folded, or picturing a glove turned inside out. Architects, engineers, sculptors, painters rely heavily on this. And interestingly, it doesn't strictly require sight. People who are blind can develop extraordinary spatial awareness using touch and hearing.
And culture plays a role here too, doesn't it? I remember reading about certain groups.
Yeah, the example of Inuit children navigating the tundra is powerful. They develop incredible spatial skills, discerning tiny variations in snowdrifts or light out of sheer necessity. They scored exceptionally high on spatial tests, showing how environment can really hone a specific intelligence.
That's a perfect lead into the last two, the ones added later, the contextual intelligences.
Right. First, naturalistic intelligence. This is about understanding and interacting with the natural world, recognizing patterns in plants, animals, weather, geology.
So it's more than just liking the outdoors.
Oh, yeah. It's an ability to classify things, to see systems in nature. Think of an experienced farmer reading the clouds, or a botanist identifying plants, or a chef intuitively understanding how ingredients work together. It's about thriving within an environment.
And the final one, the most abstract perhaps, existential intelligence.
Yes, the big picture intelligence. This is the capacity and tendency to ponder the deep questions of human existence. Why are we here? What's the meaning of life? Death. It's the domain of philosophers, theologians, people grappling with ultimate realities. It's harder to measure, sure, but Gardner felt it was a distinct human capacity to think beyond the immediate, the physical, the social.
Okay, so you have these 9 distinct frames. What's the big takeaway for us, practically to speak? You said intelligence is actionable.
That's maybe the most crucial point. Gardner argued strongly against the idea that intelligence is fixed at birth. You can consciously work to improve any of these intelligences. If you feel weak in logical reasoning, doing 50 math problems every day will strengthen that capacity. He talks about this using neurobiology concepts, canalization and plasticity.
Can you break those down quick?
Actually, sure. Canalization is like the natural, somewhat predetermined pathways of development. Think of water flowing easily down an existing channel. Our basic nervous system development follows some canalized paths. But plasticity is the brain's amazing ability to be shaped by experience and environment, especially early in life. It's like clay. The multiple intelligences theory provides a map for how we can best use that plasticity, especially in education.
Which leads us right to Gardner's big critique of traditional schooling. He called treating every kid the same the most unfair education.
Yeah, because standard schooling overwhelmingly caters to just two intelligences, the linguistic and the logical mathematical. He called it the law professor mind. If you don't fit that mold, you're often left behind.
So educational reform, in his view, needs a radical shift. Teachers need to present things in different ways.
Exactly. Use a child's strengths to teach other things. If a kid is highly musical or spatial, use those abilities to teach coding, for example. Find multiple pathways to the same learning goal.
And move away from just memorizing facts, that
Right.
mile wide and an inch deep problem.
Absolutely. The focus should be on deep understanding, getting kids to actively recreate knowledge in their own minds, not just parrot it back. The goal shouldn't just be to know science facts, but to learn to think scientifically, how to form a hypothesis and test it. Or not just memorize history dates, but learn to think historically, maybe by doing oral history projects, analyzing primary sources.
If we're teaching differently, we have to assess differently too. How do you test 9 kinds of smarts?
Gardner argued assessment needs to be much more transparent and ongoing. Think less final exam, more like coaching in sports or arts. Students should know what they're aiming for often through performances, projects, exhibitions where they actually use their skills. And the ultimate goal, self-assessment, helping students internalize the standards so they can critique and improve their own work.
So, frames of mind really gave us a much richer vocabulary for talking about human ability. It made it clear that potential is diverse, complex, and importantly, something we can develop. It's not just a number.
Exactly. And it forces us to see how our culture shapes which intelligences get valued and nurtured. You mentioned the Balinese culture focusing heavily on specific interpersonal roles. Or consider the societal strain in Iran when their education system shifted dramatically towards valuing only logical mathematical skills, potentially marginalizing other vital human capacities. It has real-world consequences.
It definitely makes you think. Looking around at your own life, your work, your community, which of these intelligences does your environment reward the most? And maybe more importantly, which ones do you consciously choose to cultivate in yourself? That interaction between our potential and our culture is something worth reflecting on.